Welcome to Daniel Lotz's Feature Film Editing Masterclass. If you can tell, this is presented in a black and white, potentially 4:3 aspect ratio, assuming everything goes correct. And this is the first editing masterclass, and the reason why I'm doing it in black and white is a reference to how I learned how to edit feature films when I first learned in 2008. I started watching YouTube videos that were 1950s re-uploads of how classic filmmakers would edit their feature films. And so I thought it'd be a very good tribute and a fun way to do this if I presented it in black and white 4:3, kind of a throwback to that era. If you have a little bit of time, I would really suggest you pour yourself a glass of scotch, brandy, my case, wine, whatever you have that would put you in the mood in order to be relaxed and understanding that this is going to be a very long and maybe tedious at times. So you might want to have something to make things a little bit more fun. Okay, now that you've sufficiently paused and gotten your drink, I think the first thing we need to talk about is media. Media is extremely important because I think it has a big effect on how you edit your films. For me, I use SSD cards, and I think the reason is because it has an SSD card reader, which is very fast, very efficient, and I can shoot on ProRes, which allows me to edit in the most efficient and fast way possible for my films. Another way you can do it is just SD cards. They're a little less fast. The readers are a little less fast. And when you're trying to shoot stuff and come back, it's kind of a hassle, especially if you have an SD card to edit on that, unless you really feel like you have to do it that way. For me, I would suggest picking up an SSD card and editing everything on that, whether it's on your Atomos reader or a reader of that kind, or if you have that in your computer, solid state drives are just faster for editing in general. Forgive me, I'm going to be intermittently sipping and pouring as I do this because the best way to teach people how to edit is by getting a little drunk. So, now that you've figured out your solution, I would suggest taking some time and thinking about what you're going to be doing. So if it's SD or SSD, how are you going to be shooting your film? Are you going to be shooting everything in one period of time, putting it all on a drive, then editing it at the end? Or are you going to be shooting and editing and putting stuff on the drive in the middle of shooting? For me, I found that making a film is a lot easier while you're shooting and editing at the same time. It's faster, it allows you to correct for mistakes, and I think it allows you as a filmmaker to be a little bit more precise in what you actually want, because you're seeing what I would call dailies. You're letting yourself see the dailies and process what is going well and what is going terrible about your footage. I did a feature film called Long Con that is currently not out. And the reason why is because I left all the editing at the end, and it left for a very long and messy process. For my feature film Chlorine and for the current made Sheep Theater that I'm still working on, the film was those films were a lot faster to edit because I was doing them as I'm going along, and it allows me to have a very fast and smooth process. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, I think we should move on to what I would call my main principles in editing. These are core things that I believe at the core of any edit. I think the first thing that you need to do is establish an aspect ratio. When you open a timeline, figure out what aspect ratio you're going to do right away. This is a very simple and very kind of no-brainer thing. But a lot of people just kind of import their footage. They don't really know what aspect ratio, and they just let the footage interpret into whatever aspect ratio the footage was shot in. This is so wrong. I think the best way to do this, honestly, is to just pick a ratio. For me, it's 2160 by 1600. Correction. I've been drinking. It is 3840 by 1600. Sorry, that is the correct ratio. But you need to think about every ratio and what is the effect on your film. For me, I like the 21:9 ratio because it has a lot of specific cinematic intentions behind it. It's very much a widescreen format, and I like that because it allows you to crop. It allows you to have a more thin strip-like look. I think that looks very appealing to the viewer. And for me, I just think it allows you to get a more wide image that I think these DSLRs don't allow you to have. You have more of a 16:9 boxy look, which might be good for certain things, but for the case of a cinematic production, I think a lot of times it does not meet the needs of that unless your film has a very specific realistic quality to it. The second principle of editing is establishing a production style. You need to understand how you're going to edit the film before you edit the film, which seems kind of counterintuitive. I think you need to allow yourself ground rules of what tools you will let yourself play with and what tools you're going to avoid to play with because they'll become distractions. For me, that means limiting yourself to the cut tool, to the moving left and right tool, keeping the tools very simple. If you start using all the tools and all the bells and whistles, you'll be more concerned about knowing all these hotkeys rather than actually just editing the film. I think the most basic stuff is just the C, V buttons. That is pretty much it. You just need to be able to use your mouse to move stuff. You need to be able to cut. You need to be able to move the whole timeline from left to right. And I don't think you really need to know hotkeys in the sense that just keep it basic. If you have to know all these other keys, you're probably not focusing on editing. This also comes down to stuff like transitions. Keep the transitions sparse. Unless you're trying to make a George Lucas Star Wars type film where you need a lot of transitions that are very creative and different, I would say keep it very sparse. You need simple cut, black and white, to just whatever it is. So you don't need to have a big transition that goes and fades and does a swirl. Just keep it simple. That means just cut from one scene to the next scene. Only use fades, in my opinion, for very intentional dreamlike effects. Other than that, I think they come off very cheesy and they don't look very good. Look at something like David Lynch. He uses a lot of fades in his work. Those are very effectively done because he uses them and he knows how to use them. Usually, if your footage is not shot correctly, you cannot crossfade it. It will just look terrible. The third principle of editing for me is that you don't need to worry about organization. This is going to be one of the most controversial rules I've ever made because a lot of people think that organization is important. I find organization extremely overrated when it comes to how you edit footage, and here's why. If you are in a timeline such as this, let's say you want to find this exact shot. I'm going to pull this up a little bit bigger. I will get a better shot so that you can see. If you want this exact shot, if my computer will ever wake up. As I said, SSDs are a lot faster than shooting it on the drive. Okay, let's say you're shooting this shot. A lot of people would say, organize it into a folder. Call it Joel's footage from the beach. That sounds very smart. Makes a lot of sense. But what is the purpose of doing it? Let's say, whoopsie, I misplaced a shot. Where do I find it? If I go now and then I search Joel's footage, it's going to take me forever to do it. It's going to take me 20 seconds to do it. Why not just allow yourself to re-import the same footage over again? If you have the shot in your timeline and you just need it somewhere else, it's just as fast, if not faster, if you know the exact name of the file, to just go to the exact file. Personally, that's what I've always done. Most of the time, you never even need to go back to look at footage unless you are editing the scene again, which seems to be very counterintuitive. Usually, the way I edit is edit a scene, put it together, lock it down, tweak it, and then I'm done with it. I never go back and finish a scene the next day. If you're doing a scene, you finish the scene that day. If you don't finish it that day, you're wasting your time because you're going to forget the momentum that you had before editing that scene. So, in that case, if you are just piecemealing it willy-nilly, organize your footage. That's great. For a film like The Long Con, it's a little bit more necessary because me and Joel were new to the process and we were transferring footage left and right, and we needed to make sure where everything was. But if you're shooting footage on the day and you're importing it, you don't need to do an exorbitant long process. The only thing I would organize is your file folders on your actual computer. But in Adobe, you don't need to make hierarchies. That's just a waste of time, and you're just stalling from editing. That's the truth. So now let's get into a couple actual theories and ideas that I have based on some of the actual edits I've made, and then we'll maybe I'll put some clips in here and we'll talk about it a little bit, how we did this. So we used our footage that we downloaded and immediately put on our computer, and we have Joel here. He shot this footage in Florida, and see, this will be the first one about the fades. I said use them sparingly. This is a perfect shot to illustrate why you want to do it sparingly. This is has a few of the qualities I was talking about. Only use fades for dreamlike shots. First of all, we have this out of focus water shot, which most people would say is a waste of time. Why would you even use this footage out of focus? I kind of thought it had this dreamlike quality showing that Joel was on the beach. So I cut to that shot, and I thought it was kind of interesting. Like, it kind of conveyed his sleepiness. And then we needed to get him from the beach to his home. And this is where a fade is so effective if you're going to use it very sparingly. Because we allowed ourselves to transition from water to a composite frame that has very little going on. It's a shot of a pool. There's nothing in the frame. It's just water. So it's a match cut from water to water. And what's really effective about it is that the fade looks good on top of the other shot. So then we have our character now re-enters the scene. And he is now in the shot, and we've just transitioned the character without having to do any walking shots, without having to do anything getting him to the location. We essentially, in 2 shots, got him from the beach to the pool, and you can understand his motivation. He's all about relaxation. And he comes in, and then he's back in the pool. So that is a very simple, clean, effective way to use a fade if you're going to do something like that. But you don't need that always. So you have this, we hold on the shot for very long, for a very specific reason, to show the kind of relaxation, the laziness. This character is supposed to be very lazy and kind of enjoying himself and being carefree. And if we just cut this real quick, I think you wouldn't get that same tension, that same feel to it. Then we cut to the shot of him in the hot tub, and it looks like at the very beginning Joel is actually setting up the shot. He's clearly adjusting his shirt, and then he's kind of closes his eyes, and he does that. But I kind of liked the effect of him messing around with his shirt. I thought it kind of had a funny element to it. So then I kind of allowed that to play out, and then I was going to cut, like, about here. This is where naturally in my mind I would feel that cut. But Joel did something really funny. He slipped into the pool. And I thought it would be kind of funny to allow myself to hold on that shot. Sometimes comedy can be extended or made funnier by holding on a shot. And I think a lot of directors think that comedy is punchy and it's fast. Sometimes holding on a shot, especially when that shot has more funny information, sometimes let yourself play out the shot and see what happens. And I think that's kind of one scene that shows a little bit about the principles that we had learned, especially about fading the transitions. And then another scene that we did the fading transitions. I believe we had one in here. Maybe I'm wrong. We did not. That'd be over here, actually. We had a dream sequence. Again, another use of the fading transitions. We had this golden sheep. This is part of the film. And I'm having a dream about this golden sheep. And I fade between shots of him. And because it's shot in such a stark, colorless situation where it's just one color, the fades are very, very dramatic. And they have a very poignant sort of feel to them. And you can get away with it without it seeming too weird. So now let's get a little bit into more of the feature film and how we edited some of these portions. Again, all of this is unseen footage that I have not shown anyone, so please do not go and spoil anyone on the internet. But let's look at a scene like this. This is one of the crucial elements to the film. It's the first time that the sheep character comes to life. And now I click the next sequence. One second. The first time we see the sheep character comes to life. And then we wanted to have an interaction between the sheep character, myself, and showing the sheep character moving without me moving it, because the film was shot all by myself, with the exception of one shot with my wife and a few shots with Joel Dick and Joel Haver. For the most part, I did everything myself, so I wanted to show off the fact that I was doing this all myself, but also keeping it dynamic. A lot of the scenes in the film are just one-shot scenes. It's just a shot, we let it play out, we cut. Rinse, repeat. This scene was a little different because I wanted there to be a couple different qualities. This is an important scene, so we start off with this candle shot because the candle was held in the previous scene, and I didn't really know exactly how to transition away from the previous scene, so I thought out-of-focus candle shot coming into focus would kind of show that like the candle's been put down, we're in a different scene, and the only way I came up with this idea was because I was shooting in real time. If I didn't shoot this in real time, I would have gotten back in editing and been like, oh shit, I need the candle, and then I need to get a shot, and then I would have never gotten it. So then we cut into a close-up of the sheep, and the reason being, let me play this dialogue here. Give me a second.
Okay. So you were really moving just right back there.
So the reason why I started on the sheep is, I think, kind of obvious. I wanted the scene to be, from my perspective, from the dialogue, but I thought it would be good to show that the sheep is moving as if that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing the sheep moving, it's kind of weird, and then my dialogue accentuates the weirdness of the scene. And it kind of really shows that what we saw just before, that's what we saw. We saw him moving, the sheep is moving, something is off. And we do this in a really big close-up on the character. And then we cut in to another close-up of myself. And using myself, I could have gone to the wide shot at that point, but I wanted this to be an intimate moment where both the characters, the toy sheep and myself, are both very intense in the scene. We're both talking to each other at this kind of fire-lit scene. And I thought it would be interesting if we were both very locked in. We didn't really know where we were as an audience. We just kind of saw that we were both near each other. And we kind of hold on that, I think, for a little bit. We go back and forth, allowing ourselves to ramp up the intensity of my interaction with it. And then, when it becomes necessary, we push out wide, because I figured that would be the first time we'd want to actually see the creature effects, as I would call them. And I thought it would be nice to kind of go from a close, repeat that again, then to a wide shot so that it felt fresh. So we allowed ourselves to do it 2 passes. We did candle, 1 shot, 2 shot, 1 shot, 2 shot, and then we cut to our 3rd shot. So it's like music. You have certain beats. We do like 1 2 1 2, and then it's 1 2 1 2 3. So that 3rd shot kind of breaks the rhythm of the previous 4 beats that we had, the 2 shots that we used. And so that 5th beat that comes in allows us to have a much different feel to the scene, and it allows it to feel a little bit more expansive now that we have this kind of wide shot showing like, oh my gosh, this sheep is alive. It looks real. And then we kind of cut back to this close-up setup, because this is the best way to convey my emotion. And also, this is a thing that I think editors, especially if you're making a feature film on your own and you're just doing what you can, you have to consider the quality of each shot. And in the wide shot, we had a little bit of a problem with the audio. So I try to stick on these closer shots more often and only use the wide shots to accentuate the quality of the scene. So this scene, we needed to show a shot of the sheep like moving around and like jumping, and that's why we use this shot. And it allows the audience to see like, oh my gosh, the creature is moving. That's awesome. So we only really use that scene, that wide shot, I think twice in the whole sequence. But then we do something really cool at the end. We cut back to the candle. This is something I also picked up at the very end, and it was very, very important because we blow it out, and then we use this as a transitionary element to our best friend montage with the Harry Nilsson music. Montages, I really like to always fade them into the audio of the previous scene. There's nothing better that gets your anticipation up than having a song come in 3 seconds before the visuals hit, because it kind of gets your audience primed, ready to go like, oh my gosh, I love that song. I can't wait to hear it. So we play that song. Again, I don't really want to play it because I don't want to get in trouble. But we play it, and then the next shot comes in with this kind of like dreamy shot of me sleeping, and the sheep is moving around. So another big thing, like I said, is when you're ever editing a feature film and you want to go from a regular scene to a montage or a heightened reality type thing, let the music play in first. Let the dreamy quality play in first before you see it, because it kind of gets your audience mind wet for like, what is coming next? What is priming them? What is the next thing that's going to happen? What are they going to see? And then they see it, and then hopefully it lives up to their expectation. So if we all can, let's take a little bit of a break right now. We're going to move into some other little things. And this is all, the way I'm doing this is just kind of random findings that I'm looking at my scenes and just sort of explaining my theories on stuff. So if you want a more scripted thing, talk to me on Patreon and see if there's maybe something you're more specifically interested in. I'm just kind of giving you my findings of what I specifically enjoyed. This was a very unique scene. We had Joel Haver sending in some footage, and we had me recording some footage. So we had this shot of me by the window. It's kind of like a silhouette composite shot of like me, just very stark black shadow, and you have this very bright foreground with trees. And I told Joel Haver to film something kind of similar. I told him to shoot something by the window if he could, and he found some trees as well by his window, and he did the same thing. I had the urge to edit this scene with another shot, and I still haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. But the reason why I played the Joel Haver shot as one continuous shot I never cut was because I shot my scene as one continuous cut. And I thought it would be a little bit more effective if my scene plays completely long. It's like a whole minute long shot of me like crying. Then it cuts to Joel Haver, and Joel Haver is in his scene in front of the window. Same kind of shadowy effect. He's now on the right side where I was on the left side. He's giving me wisdom and advice, and I thought it would be kind of smart to like not cut from that because the emotion of it was so potent. It just feels like you're just going right into the next bit. And I think it allows the audience to not feel like there's any breakage of time. It just goes right into the next thing. And then we cut into the next shot. He pretty much talks about, this box of stuff. And instead of doing like the traditional, the box is opening up, cutting it, doing all of that stuff, the box arrives, someone puts it down. I thought it would be funnier if we just kind of pan past the box and then it goes to black because the scene is dark. We use the fade again. And bam, you don't even notice the fade. See, this is a fade that I love to do. And again, it makes it seem like I'm doing a lot of fades, but I overall probably have maybe 10 fades in the whole film, and that's about 30 minutes I've edited so far. And the reason why I like this fade is because you don't even see it. It just kind of goes to black, and then the next scene, it's on black, and it just opens with me opening the box from the box's perspective, kind of like a Breaking Bad sort of shot. We then cut to the prop animals. We don't need to see a shot of them getting pulled out. That's just a waste of time. So allow the audience, this is a very big one, allow the audience to fill in the blanks, the production mistakes or things that you don't have time to do. Allow the audience to fill in the blanks. If someone sees a box and then the next shot someone pulls up a gun, people will know, oh, they got a gun from that box. You don't need to be like super specific. You don't always need a close-up shot of every little detail unless there's an emphasis. And I think that's important to only emphasize close-ups when they're necessary. This scene was not that important to have a close-up. But if we go back to the montage from the beginning of the film, it starts on opening from black. And it cuts into this shot of an open, like, little jewelry box. And we have this necklace. Why would I use a close-up? Why would I start a scene with a close-up? It's for emphasis. I want to emphasize something very important. This necklace will be important. Whenever you use a close-up, use it with intentionality. Do not just do close-ups for the sake of close-ups because they seem dramatic or important. Only use them if you absolutely need to convey a point. That would be a big thing for me. So I use it for that scene because I was like, I need to know, the audience to know that this necklace will be important. I actually do it twice. This is kind of controversial. Sometimes, why would I show the same information? The audience is smart. Why would I show it twice? I really wanted the audience to be drilled in their mind that this necklace is not only going to be seen once, it's not going to be seen twice, it's going to be seen multiple times. That is extremely important. So allow yourself to use close-ups when they're important for the scene. This whole scene, I use a lot of close-ups because it was all about the emotion of my character. And then for a lot of the rest of the film, I use mediums or wides because I didn't want there to be a confusion of the intentionality of why I was using these close-ups. So this scene, I use a close-up on my face to convey what I'm thinking, and I allow myself to use these close-ups before of these little items. I thought it was kind of like a Scorsese-esque sort of scene where I show the details of this character's life. There's a picture of his wife. There's a picture of something they did. They went to Vegas. There is a picture of them together. and then there's a picture of them of something that the wife liked, this little Disney globe. So, and then with the shot preceding it, following it, we have me thinking. And so I think the effect is allowing the audience to imagine that all these things are in his head. I use this kind of dreamy background in order to allow it to seem like it was anywhere. It could be anywhere. And what's interesting is I also try to do like a Kuleshov effect to this. I wanted it to be kind of cutting back and forth, and it actually came off very weird. It came off almost kind of perverted. Like it seemed like I was like thinking of these things in a weird way. Like I don't know why, but it seemed like it was just a shot of my face, and then it was a shot of like the Disney globe, and then it was like me thinking, and then it was the kid, and it seemed a little confused. Like was I thinking about this in a romantic way? Was I thinking about this in like I'm gonna murder this person way? It was very confusing. So I thought it was much more starkly presented if I just showed the images, showed myself. I think it conveyed the sadness a lot more. So be careful with that Kuleshov effect. You don't want it to seem like your character is having intentions of like lust or murder when you're trying to convey a very innocent message, which is this character is sad. So let's talk a little bit more about montages. Specifically, we'll use this Golden Brown montage. That's the song that I used in the scene. And use about the compounding interest of emotions. Is what I would call it. Compounding of interest of emotions. And the basic principle of this compounding interest of emotions is if you want something conveyed, show it as many times as you need to convey it. We have this character. I wanted to show him interacting with the sheep characters, but then I wanted to show a shot of like a bunch of shots of the sheep watching it. And why am I doing that? Because I want the audience to feel like, oh my gosh, there's a looming threat coming. These sheep are kind of creepy. They're kind of creepy. They all start like looking at him. They start kind of investigating him. With the compounding interest of emotions, we have multiple shots saying the same thing. And I think a lot of times in editing, it's about cutting your fat, cutting your babies. But sometimes the fat is what is able to convey what you're trying to say. So for me, not every scene needs to be cut leanly. Specifically, montages do not need to be cut leanly. You can have things go on for a long period of time and convey very much a similar emotion as long as that emotion is something that the audience really wants to see. Let me go to YouTube real quick. I have a very special clip that I want to show you guys. I mean, you've seen it probably. If you've seen any of my films, you've probably seen it. So it's not that special, but I think this conveys the exact same point. This is not the clip. I'm just getting onto the YouTube channel. So we're gonna go here. We have the scene from Chlorine, and we cut to the Vegas scene. It's very much a similar scene. And the whole scene is my character, Dan, the pool boy, is sad. And we sustain this emotion for probably a course of 2 to 3 minutes of literally just me walking around being sad in Vegas. This could have been conveyed in 30 seconds. But why you do it in such a long 2 to 3 minute span? A lot of people might say you're just padding the runtime. That's very valid. I would disagree, and here's why. An emotion, especially something complex like sadness or anger or something that's a little bit more internal, it's not as easily conveyed in just a 30-second little blip. You can say it, but it won't really convey the depth or the breadth of which the sadness is or the anger is. So, in this scene, we need to show him doing a bunch of fun things that normal people would be happy about. This character is just disgusted or sad and doesn't want to do any of these things. he never has fun. And that is a very big thing. He's drinking, he's not having fun. He's in the pool, he's not having fun. He's going to the tiger exhibit, he's not having fun. If we just showed it in one little shot of him going to Vegas and he goes in the pool and he just sits there, it wouldn't really convey the emotion as clearly and cleanly to the audience. So I think sometimes having length to your scenes sometimes allows you to convey a more complex version of the emotion you want. In Hollywood, a lot of times it's all about getting the most stripped down, clean version of something. I think with indie film and slow cinema and stuff like this, you can allow yourself to be a little bit more creative and a little bit more expansive with what you're doing in terms of what you're trying to say. So I think that's where I'm going to end it off today, guys. I think this is a really good little editing class. I'm going to edit this all together. It's probably going to have a bunch of jump cuts and me drinking, and this is kind of like a frenetic, crazy sort of style editing I've never tried before. So hopefully it's good. Hopefully it's fun. If it's not, tell me. But if you like this, we're going to do some more about like how to edit a feature film. I think you guys would love to learn a little bit more, and I would love to talk about feature filmmaking. I have a lot to say, and I would love if you guys would check out my YouTube channel. I assume you already have, and give me more recommendations of what I should do on my Patreon. Thank you, guys.